All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Never Less Than Ill, the number one podcast for hip hop appreciation. Myself, your host, Justin Ivy, longtime hip hop journalist, and my co-host, the mastermind behind Bros Who Think, Mr. Lyn Burton. Lyn, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Can't complain, just chilling. How are you doing in this it's a very sports heavy time right now in the world. So like I'm digging the NBA playoffs. I know you're big into LSU baseball. How are you doing?
Oh yeah, man. Been enjoying the playoffs, and yeah, absolutely. I'm all in on the surprise run of LSU baseball. That's been fun. But and as a the ex of the ex fan, I guess you say, of CP3 and Monty Williams, I'm sort of enjoying vicariously the Suns as a Pels fan, and wishing those guys were still around.
I feel that. No, every time I watch them play, I'm just hand on face.
But yeah, obviously we've really enjoyed all the feedback that we received about the show. Thank y'all so much for listening. We got another good one for you this week. We're going to be talking about the legendary trio De La Soul, Native Tongues Collective. One of the best to ever do it. And this week, as our guest, got an old friend of mine, old co-worker at HipHopDX, Kyle Eustice. She's interviewed these guys a bunch in her career, and I couldn't think of anyone much better to get than her. So, we're going to enjoy a real fun conversation with her about De La Soul, getting all into their career, and a little bit of recent news, too, with the way Tommy Boy Records getting purchased and how that might affect their career. So we'll jump into a little bit of that. We'll get right into that conversation with Kyle right now. All right, we're here with Kyle Eustice, my old co-worker. We're talking a little De La Soul. Kyle, how you been?
I miss you, dude. I'm not gonna lie. I really do. I've been okay, but your presence is definitely missed around there for me.
Oh well, I'm sorry to hear that. I guess we're talking about some fun stuff today with one of the legendary trios in hip hop. So to kind of get this rolling, what was your introduction to De La Soul? You remember the first time you heard them?
So I was trying to think of this all day. I'm like, where was the first time? And I do remember being really young and hearing Me, Myself, and I at a record store in Omaha, Nebraska, at this place called Homer's. I'm from Omaha, of all places, not exactly the hip hop mecca, but we did get our hands on some tapes. Yes, I said tapes. And then, I didn't really like gravitate toward them as heavily until I was in New Mexico one day and I was digging through my friend's CDs and she had some De La Soul stuff and I put it on and I was like, this is just so amazing. It was such an uplifting experience that I just kept devouring De La after that and just really dove in to their first 3 albums, mostly at first, but we'll get to that.
All right, so we'll kind of start at the beginning, obviously with 3 Feet Height and Rising in 89. Obviously, this is the first of their first 3 that are produced by Prince Paul. What are kind of your memories of the album and kind of your overall assessment of it?
Okay, so a lot of people didn't like the skits, but I thought they were really funny. Like some people don't really gravitate towards those, but I just thought it really captured their senses of humor and their innocence so well that it cracked me up. I'm probably not alone here when I say this, but what impressed me the most was the sheer amount of samples of all types of different music that were in there, from the Turtles, which ended up getting them sued, which kind of sucks. But to Beastie Boys, to you name it, Hall & Oates, there were so many eclectic samples. And I thought that was really a fun part of the album because I would hear the sample and go, oh, like, where did that come from? And then I'd go find that song. And that's always been kind of one of my favorite games, like one of my favorite things about hip hop in general. And so overall, I thought that album was so uplifting, so fun. I just really felt like I got to know them as people, like through that record. And I loved Prince Paul's production. I mean, that dude, he knows his stuff. So yeah, I thought it was really well put together. And they didn't think it was going to work. They thought it was either going to be really good or it was just going to flop, right? But look what it ended up doing, you know? I mean, it's just kind of one of those, like, I don't know, success stories that you love to hear about, you know?
You mentioned the skits, and it's kind of funny, when you fast forward to now, it's like the skits kind of gone away, but it's like they were really the pioneers of that, and it just became such a thing in the 90s. It's like your album just had to have a skit. It had to have one, but it's like, they actually had them planned out through every album, and it had a little story to it, and made
Yeah.
and obviously with the Prince Paul connection, he's
Yeah.
kind of a master of concept albums.
Yeah, well, but also a lot of it was really organic as well. Like sometimes they'd just be playing like random pranks on each other and it would end up getting recorded. And they're like, no, we're not going to cut that. We're going to leave it. And so a lot of it, you just hear them goofing around, which again, like it just kind of let me know who they were as young, 20 somethings back in the day.
Absolutely. So, early on, De La Soul, we get them. They're kind of one of our introductions to the native tongues. Jungle Brothers obviously come up first, and a Tribe arguably, kind of the face of the group these days. But De La Soul really, brought us to this collective. Where do you kind of rank native tongues in terms of like the grand scheme of hip hop crews? Where would you put them?
Man, they're up there for me. I mean, damn, like if we didn't have De La Soul, we wouldn't have Mos Def. I mean, arguably. Like, I like how Maceo put it in the Mass Appeal documentary. He's like, I don't think we discovered Mos Def. I think he presented himself to us. And I thought that was a really good way to put it. But like without them, would we ever know Black on Both Sides? I don't know. So I think, for me, they're freaking up in the top 5 for sure. For me, come on now, you know my style.
Got you. So, we with the De La Soul, we've got the dynamic of, the plugs, as they say, plug 1, plug 2, plug 3. But Paz and Dave are the rappers, and Maceo is the DJ. What you've talked to Maceo a lot over the years. What do you think maybe is something about Maceo that people don't appreciate enough, in terms of his contributions to the group?
That he can rhyme too, that he gets on some albums too, and he can flow, he can spit, he can do all the same things that his partners do. And I think I don't know, like he's kind of described he's almost like the big brother, I feel like, in a way, of De La Soul. I don't know why that is. But I think, as he was described growing up, he was kind of like the tougher, like street guy of the group. And he always just seems like he's kind of like the protector. And so I don't know. I think those two things, like he can rap, he can DJ, he can do all that stuff, but he's also like a big brother type of person. I think he really cares about his close friends, and it's evident in the group.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that that kind of De La Soul's true selves, I guess you could say. They got branded as the hippies, the Daisy. They're talking about the Daisy Age and stuff, and so
right.
That was what was so interesting with De La Soul's Dead, is just the way they flipped it completely and abandoned that style. And I think they're somewhat unique in hip hop. I think because when I think of a lot of hip hop from the 80s or 90s, that second album was just kind of more of the formula, more of, what got them to that, what got you fans to begin with. But De La Soul just kind of said, nope, we're going completely opposite.
Yeah. Yep.
What's your kind of thought on De La Soul doing that, and them kind of not liking that hippie branding, them famously being mad about Arsenio calling them the hippies of hip hop and stuff?
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was courageous. I thought it was bold. I thought it was like the perfect way to say, like, we're gonna be who we are no matter what. So fuck y'all. I just thought like even down to the album cover with the dead plants, you know, the dead flowers in the pot and all of it. I mean, I just thought it was really a really intriguing move on their part. And I also think, like I said, it just showed kind of their bravery and unwillingness to conform or be put in a box. And I love the production on that record. I mean, yeah, dude, that album was great. Freaking love Paul. I love Paul so much. Hey, what's up, Paul? If you're listening, you know I love you, Paul.
Yeah, I think of like 3 Feet and High and Rising as kind of a happy album, like very very like me, myself, and I were talking, we mentioned that song.
Yeah.
It's just it's such a, like, it puts you in such a good mood. But De La Soul's Dead, like, to me, that has one of my favorite De La songs, which is Millie Pulled a Pistol and Santa.
Oh,
And it's
I'm
like,
so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up.
yeah, what did you want to say? Anything about that song?
I was revisiting it yesterday and I was like, man, I was like, this was super progressive for that time, you know, like there weren't a ton of artists talking about something as serious like that and like and describing it in a way that was like, wow, like this girl really went through this. And like the climax of the whole thing, like showing up at the mall and shooting Santa, like I just thought it was a really awesome topic for them to discuss, and they did it in a way that was still De La Soul, you know what I mean? I thought that song was super powerful, and I'm glad that they brought attention to an issue like that. It was really good, really, really good.
Because it is funny, like, it's kind of got that, like, you see that song title and it's just kind of just on, like, if you were just picking up the CD or the tape or whatever and you saw that on the back, like that just stands out, like, wait, what is
You're
this?
like, what?
Yeah, what is this? And it's such a great storytelling record,
right? And you wouldn't think that it was going to be about something like sexual assault or like something as I don't know, controversial, but then there it is, and you're just like, whoa, like it kind of like takes you by surprise a little bit, that they got into some content like that. I thought it was dope.
Absolutely. So what I think another thing that stands out with that album too is we're talking about how De La used their skits and stuff. They kind of create this world with the WKMS radio, and they're also very, like, this album, I think, more than anything at that time in hip hop, it's just so self-deprecating. Like, these guys are mocking themselves in a way, like,
Yeah.
you're so used to, like, hip hop having a certain bravado and braggadocio, and it's like these guys were just clowning themselves in a way, in part because they wanted to abandon that hippie label, but some of it was just kind of joking with themselves. Did that stand out to you, and what do you think it is about those guys' personalities that just made them willing to kind of go there?
I think that is such a good point. Like, I don't know if I necessarily ever thought about that, because you're right. Like, we're so used to hip hop artists like bragging about how dope they are and they got this and they got that. But like, you don't really hear a lot of hip hop artists like making fun of themselves on the regular. And I just think it's a testament to their personalities. They're just so funny and they're just fun to be around, and they don't take themselves too seriously. Like, yeah, Maceo will get a little serious when he's talking about the Tommy Boy stuff, but then even then he's like cracking jokes and telling me stories about how like Tretch from Naughty by Nature went and leaked a bunch of like snakes and rats into Tommy's office, like back in the day, like he'll always inject some sort of like humor into it, no matter how serious the subject is. I mean, the song you just mentioned is a perfect example. It's a very serious song, but like the title is ridiculous. But yeah, I don't know, those guys, I think about their personalities, I think they've just known each other for so long. It's like they went to freaking high school together. They've known each other since they were kids, just playing around. And I don't think that's changed. I don't think that dynamic really changes as you grow older with people that you've known that long. And so I think they're really able to kind of hone in on that and like keep that organic and just be jokesters and just joke around.
So in terms of the De La's trilogy, those first 3 albums, the trilogy with Prince Paul, they finish up with Balloon Mind State. And this is an interesting album because you know, if I'm thinking about the Prince Paul albums, I think most people would say, oh, you know, the 3 Feet High or De La Soul
Yeah.
is my favorite. Like, but Balloon Mind State kind of gets relegated sometimes, but it's still a very good album, and it's also a little more jazzy. And they, you know, they even kind of, you know, they have a record. They get Fred Wesley and Maceo Parker are on it. You know, like they got legit jazz legends like working on this album. What do you kind of assess Balloon Mind State in their discography and how it, you know, measures up to their other albums with Prince Paul?
I mean, again, I feel like they were constantly reinventing themselves. And so this was another example of that. That album actually has one of my favorite songs as well. And this is one of the first I heard too, was Break of Dawn. I love that song. The vibe of that song, just like, it's just super chill and kind of just, you know, you just want to relax and kick it and like just drive around listening to that song. I don't know. It, I would rank that up there too. I mean, for me, it is the trifecta. Like those first 3 records are just incredible, but we'll get to their last record because, dude, I have so much to say about that last record. But Balloon Mind State is just another one that I love their diversity. I loved what they were doing with the jazz stuff. And again, amazing album. Boom. Loved it.
So we get to, you know, the mid 90s, De La Soul, Stakes is High. Now this is 1996. This is obviously 1996, amazing year for hip hop. Stakes is High is my favorite De La Soul album. You know, I know a lot of people like to say like De La Soul is, and Prince Paul's got to be with De La Soul. Like that's their essential De La Soul. For me, Stakes is High is the best album. And you know, that title track, oh man, like just
it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah,
and you want to know what's funny?
Yeah, go ahead.
Prince Paul, that's actually his favorite album. And he's like, you know what? I probably shouldn't say that, but you know, it probably should have been one of the first 3 that I did. But he's like, that album is like my favorite Daylight album, which I think is very telling. You know what I mean? Like they were really able to rise to any occasion, despite who their producer was, and just nail it. Like Stakes is High is one of the dopest songs ever.
That's funny. You know, I wonder almost if Paul like is able to appreciate it more because he has distance from it. You know, it's like creating it, you know, it's sort of his baby, but it's like he's able to actually be a fan, you know.
That's probably, there's probably some truth to that for sure. But I just thought that was so funny. I was like, really? But yeah, that title track is probably one of my favorites as well. Again, it's so hard to rank these records because those first 4 now, I mean, all amazing.
Yeah, no, like you'll see sometimes those debates happen, you know, on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, where people start going at it about who has the best 3 for, you know, first 3 albums or whatever. And it's like De La Soul had 4. Like that, like De La Soul needs to be in those combos more because it's like their first 4 were just incredible. And
they knocked them out of the park.
And the Stakes is High is, like you said, is not only were they not just working with Prince Paul, but they also just came with a different style again. It was like they, you know, and they also were coming with a, you know, critique of hip hop at the time, you know, as it's getting more and more commercial. And
loved it. Yeah.
And that's aged extremely well. You know, it, you know,
it's sad but true.
It's funny to think about that, like that, you know, some of those critiques, like, you know, some of the old stuff, you know, critique wise would be like, you know, guys, you know, you got a ghostwriter, you got, you know, your rhymes aren't as dope, like that, like those would just fall on some like deaf ears these days. But like they were kind of attacking more commercialism and like fake gangsterism. It is interesting. Like we talked about Master Ace in our last episode, and it is interesting how like he also was doing that with Slaughterhouse, and De La Soul kind of did that in their own way with The Stakes is High.
Yep. Oh no, I agree. I think it's really funny too. One of the best things I heard, I want to say it was Maceo. I can't remember exactly, but they're talking about how like when Puffy came on the scene, you know, and like all of a sudden made it all about like this flashy and like this, you know, this these shiny suits and how you looked. And before, like, hip hop welcomed you no matter what. Like, you could have, you know, a fucked up hairdo, and like you didn't have to be the best looking guy on the block, you know, or woman. Like, you know, if you had the skills, like, you were in, you know. And then the puffy era came, and it was like all about like, what kind of clothes do I have? What kind of car do I drive? You know, and like there was a really big shift, and like that wasn't De La. That wasn't De La's style at all. So yeah, I can understand why they were rapping about stuff like that, you know. Definitely.
You mentioned Mos Def earlier, and that you know, this is kind of his grand introduction. Obviously, you know, like heads, like people that like digging the crates and knew everything. They might be familiar with urban thermodynamics and, you know, what he was doing, but this was the first kind of like branded Mos Def solo feature. And this is, you know, it is kind of sad, you know, looking at it today. It's like, it's kind of that lost art. Like, that was one of my favorite things on, you know, discovering hip hop albums or finding an album, was like, there would always be like some guest that you didn't know, and they introduced you, and then like they became a huge star. And so like it is, you know, now it's kind of like, oh, I stick to like the ones that are going to give me my streams, you know. But that was what, you know, one of those examples of like, okay, here's a star making performance for Mos Def. You talked a little bit about, you know, how De La Soul doesn't feel, you know, take credit for him or anything, but you know, how important do you see that feature, you know, as for Mos Def, you know, and what he would become?
I mean, I think because De La Soul was already so established, I think that was absolutely crucial for him to kind of get his name out there a little bit more, because De La obviously already had a big audience and people are listening. So if they're going to hear this dude who comes on and is all of a sudden like kills shit on the business, you're like, oh man, who is this guy? I mean, I think that really got the ball rolling for him, maybe in a way that, you know, Third Base got Doom rolling. Like, I don't know. But, or Zevlov X, I should say at the time, if we want to be technical. But yeah, like, I just feel like it was a very necessary collaboration, and I'm so glad that they did that, because, you know, Black on Both Sides is probably one of my favorite records ever. And then I ended up backstage at Red Rocks one day, and Mos Def was like walking by me, and I was so nervous, Justin, but I shook his hand and I was like, thank you. And there was that moment, you know. I don't know if I would have that moment had De La not introduced them to the rest of the world. So I'm glad that they did.
So, you know, we were talking earlier, you know, about an unofficial trilogy, is essentially, you know, with Prince Paul. But this, in 2000, you know, the guys start what they planned to be an actual trilogy. You know, Artificial Intelligence album. The Mosaic Thump was the first one. Now, what was cool about this album is we got a little Prince Paul reunion on there. You know, he didn't do the whole thing, obviously, but he did produce on it. And you know, in terms of like just songs for De La Soul, that Redman joint, I love that. I love that to this day. They work so well together. What do you remember about Mosaic Thump, and you know, maybe kind of maybe the colder reception it got compared to the albums prior to it?
I was going to say, I feel like I'm kind of the guilty party there, because I didn't pay as much attention to that record as maybe I should have. And I don't know if it was because the 4-year gap or in between records, or, you know, what I was doing at the time. Who knows, Justin? I have a weird past, okay? You already know what I've been into. So that was around the time, I think, yeah, like when I was smoking a lot of weed, basically. And I think I kind of like fell off, but I got into a little bit of the Bionics, you know, and you're gonna laugh, but I really did like that Baby Fat song.
Devin the dude on there.
Like, I can't hate. Like, I loved it. Yeah, I just I kind of slept on those trilogy, like, or the supposed trilogy, to be honest. And do I regret that? Yes. Do I go back and try to, you know, learn some more? Yes, but I feel like I still have a lot to learn about those couple albums.
Yeah, the AOL ones are interesting because it's like maybe some of it was just because of the way Tommy Boy, started was deteriorating and kind of that situation, and them being unable to actually do the trilogy as they intended. But yeah, those albums, like, they're very feature heavy, and so that's and I think that maybe for De La fans, where you're so used to kind of them carrying the load, that's probably something that maybe throws you off. And I know for me personally, like, that's not that those are bad albums by any means. I wouldn't call them bad, but they're just like, they don't feel as De La Soul like that. That's why I remember I think it might have been you that interviewed Maceo, and it was like, and they he was saying we got these albums coming with Pete Rock and DJ Premier and the AOL 3, and I was just like,
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, and I was like, y'all are going back to that? Like, no, y'all can just drop that if y'all really want to. Like,
it's okay. The chapter's closed.
Like, nobody's. I don't think that. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think like there's a person like clamoring for the third one. Like, they were just like,
no. I don't think so either, but I mean, would it be cool to kind of complete that trilogy? Probably. It'd be kind of nice to have the final entry, especially
their vision was for it.
Whatever their vision was. And we still haven't seen that yet. That interview was a couple years ago, or maybe like a year and a half, but we still are waiting on that. No, it's got to be more than that, because obviously the pandemic, we've been in this for so long. So still haven't seen the album from De La yet. I am anxious for that. So, but yeah, then we had the Grind Date. 2004.
I did want to point out one more thing about AOL was
AOI.
AOI. AOI. Calling it AOL. That's the AIM kid.
Yep, I knew it was. It's okay. That's why I just like laughed to myself. I was like, I know where that's coming from.
So, but they one thing AOI did have was that, to me, that was one of like Kev Brown, the producer, one of his first like bigger credits. I think he had worked with like Grape Lover before that, but that was like one of working with De La is a big deal. And so, obviously Kev Brown, went on Low Budget Crew, and working to this day with people. But I did want to point out, like, that was probably one of those, like, Kev Brown's like first real credits that kind of broke him out, besides, just being the underground. So
yeah. Shout out to Kev Brown. At least he got some love on that one. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we definitely want to go to the Grind Date. This is kind of the kind of a new era for De La. Obviously they've left Tommy Boy at that point, which was very sour ending and remained sour. The Grind Date, is this back to the a chance to be on the indies again, and they kind of knock it out the park. It's I think a lot of people, maybe younger, not like super young, but maybe some younger fans at that time find De La Soul on that album that didn't listen, growing up to listening to them in the 90s. And I think a big part of that was just that Rock Cocaine Flow song just became,
I knew you were gonna bring that up. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's still one of Jake One's best beats.
Best song ever. Yeah. And
it
introduced him. It really, and plus Doom, I mean, that was a winning formula, and Jake really got his start, I feel like, with them as well. So that was huge for him. Huge.
What's crazy about that too is it's like not only Jake One, but Ninth Wonder was on there. Madlib was on there. Like, they were connecting with like the underground, the guys that would kind of shape the underground sound for the next decade. Like those are the main players. Like Jake One, Ninth, Madlib. Like in terms of the next decade, like these guys are shaping it. And so I think
even Super Dave West, like amazing. Yeah.
Dave West. I don't think De La Soul, deserves the credit or anything for discovering those guys. Like they had obviously been established, but I think maybe they deserve the credit for being on that already kind of legendary tier and
Mhm.
connecting with those type of guys already. You know, Madlib
Yeah.
had kind of established himself, but Ninth and Jake One were still kind of in the infancy of their careers at that point.
But De La was smart enough to freaking pull them all in, and say, hey, let's do this album together. I mean, it's a brilliant move. And then again, though, it was a very different album because there were no skits on this one. It was a different kind of vibe. And like you said, I mean, Rock Cocaine Flow was like, just knocked it out of the park. That's definitely my favorite song on the record. I'm sure it's a lot of people's favorite song on that record, but I mean, now, especially with Doom being, gone, I think it's even more special. So, yeah, that was a great album too. Like, I just feel like they don't really miss, like when they put their all into a project, they really come out with some amazing material, and we'll keep going down the line here. I can't wait to talk about the last album. And now wait.
So yeah, so De La, I think the Grind Date, obviously, I think those first four are kind of almost in a class of their own. But I mean, the Grind Date's right up there. Is like if somebody told me that the Grind Date's their favorite De La album, I wouldn't scoff or anything. It'd make perfect sense. But what's interesting, on their next one is it's a sort of an oddity. They do this Are You In mixtape, and they're working with Nike. And it's an odd time because it's the blog era, and so you're you're downloading a zip file and things like that. And they decide, okay, we're gonna make it all one track, so it's actually like a real mixtape. It's like you can't split them up and put it in your playlist. I'm just wondering, did you remember? Do you have any specific memories like about that project and like? Were you weirded out by the format? Were you, did it stand out as odd to you as the time?
Yeah. And I'm going to be honest, that was the first album where I was like, I had like zero interest in it. And I don't know if it was because of the format, but I was just skip. And I'm sorry, De La. But I really, that one didn't really grab me, like all the other ones did. So.
Yeah, I think, maybe some of it was just kind of, this is obviously the blog area, and it's not quite as maybe ridiculous as this streaming era has gotten with the weekly releases, but it was kind of that beginning of the just getting flooded with music, and it was like you had to have something really great to kind of stand out, and really stick out. And yeah, the format just kind of, it's like it was almost like it was fighting against time. It was like, I want you to listen to this like an old mixtape, and it was like everybody had just moved on from that.
Yeah, it's not time for that. I know. And plus, like I told you, I was smoking a lot of weed back then, Justin. I missed a few things. I had a period, okay? I had like a period of time that's kind of like a blur. And that album would fall into that category.
So, for the next one, it was interesting. They do basically a side project. Maceo's out of the picture for this one, and and they kind of they put the plug one, plug two monikers in the forefront, and with First Serve. What do you think about that choice? Like, I guess so many people are kind of used to Maceo almost being like in the background, and so it is almost, I guess, somewhat odd, but also sort of poignant in terms of like pointing out that Maceo, how much he does bring to it, like that we need to designate that this isn't a De La Soul record, this is a David Pasta News,
yeah, that's interesting.
But
what did you think though? Like, do you know why he wasn't there? Because I don't know the backstory at all.
I honestly don't. I
should have asked him.
I've always kind of like wondered, if it was just like he couldn't be around for the recordings and they want to do it. But I guess it does have like, there is a bit of a concept to it. And so maybe that was sort of the idea, but it is kind of weird because it's like, I think it's an album that just sort of gets lumped in as a De La Soul album, even though it's technically not built.
But it's really not. Yeah, it's really not. And again, I mean, that was another record that I was like, nah, like it just, And I wasn't interested at all. And like, you know, I tried to go and revisit it like months ago. And for some reason, it just didn't grab me. And yeah, I mean, I think the last few that we talked about, those were kind of my weaker points when it came to De La, because that's kind of when I lost interest for a little while and was high.
But yeah, it is, you know, it's kind of the beyond just like Maceo's not, you know, being involved, is they were also they were working with Duck Down at that time. And you know, I kind of envision that time as like you know, early 2010s kind of era into that decade, as kind of like when Duck Down was starting to expand, I guess, to a bit. You know, it's like Duck Down had always been like the boot camp clip, you know, records, and like that's always where you went for boot camp stuff. But they, you know, were kind of bridging out and doing more kind of collaborative, you know, without, you know, guys from outside of the ranks. And so it was interesting to kind of see De La, or, you know, two members of De La, I should say, end up there. But, you know, while stylistically, when, you know, on the surface makes sense, it makes sense in terms of kind of sensibilities, like, you know, both kind of indie underground champions.
Right.
You know, it in terms of a label to find for De La, like, you know, once you kind of get over the maybe like that Duck Down is more like boom bap in your face.
I was gonna say, it's like, but did they really fit there? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it was exactly the best home for them, because it just seems like their styles were so drastically different that it was a weird pairing. But I mean, stranger things have happened, right? And clearly, I mean, it didn't work out because they didn't stay there or anything like that. But yeah, I thought it was definitely an odd kind of matchup at that point.
And it might, and maybe, I guess, you know, when you're kind of like looking at it on the macro level, it's like maybe it's good that like that wasn't a De La Soul proper album, because it can kind of stand as its own thing on Duck Down, and this is not like mixed with the De La Soul, you know, legacy. And
that's a really good point, because honestly, I never considered it a De La record, to be honest. I never did. Not once was I like, oh yeah, first or De La Soul. No. It was just some weird little like side project over there. You know, like that's just how I
would say that like they probably deserve, you know, some credit for that on some level, you know, because it would just be like, you know, it's hard to think of like many trios where you wouldn't still feel like it's the group, you know. It's like, I know Onyx did an album, and Sunny Caesar wasn't involved, and it's like, it was still Onyx, you know. It's like
right, but kinda, but it's like when I see Public Enemy without Flavor Flav, like it's still weird. Like he should still be there. Or like when only 3 members of Bone Thugs show up, like I need the rest of you guys to kind of complete the whole thing, you know.
Makes sense. Now, you know, in terms of De La Soul proper, the whole crew is back together for the Anonymous Nobody. And this comes out in 2016. And a big part of it was the Kickstarter. You know, this is, you know, we've kind of, at that point, not that they were the first to fund an album on Kickstarter, but in terms of hip hop, like that's sort of the time where like artists are kind of seeing this as, oh, maybe this is a way I kind of avoid, you know, the trappings of the label system. You know, maybe I can go direct to fans. And theirs is, you know, a complete success. You know, they get the funding, they get what they want, and
they get a Grammy, a nomination. Yeah, and they get a Grammy nomination. First time ever.
You know, in terms of Kickstarter projects, you know, they got to stand up there as one of the better success stories in terms of music. What's kind of you know, beyond just what it was an accomplishment as a, you know, fundraising effort, what did you think of it as an album itself?
Okay, dude. All right. So I have so much to say about this. When I first got the record, honestly, I hated it. Thought it was horrible. I was like, what is this? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around first listen. And I'm not gonna like name names, but like somebody very close to their camp and I were just like, what the fuck is this? Like we did not enjoy it, right? Couple days go by. I keep listening to it, right? I'm just like trying to like figure something out. Like, what is this? I started listening to it. I'm like, yeah, this album's fucking dope. Like all of a sudden, it's something like switched, and I just fell in love with this album. Like I'm getting chills just talking about it. Like I think it is such an incredible piece of work. Again, pushing the boundaries this time. They're creating all their samples with musicians and stuff like that. Not samples, but they're all the music. You know what I mean? And working with such eclectic artists, and like granted, like they had worked with Little Dragon before, like with the Gorillaz when they won a Grammy for their feature on the Gorillaz, blah blah blah, that whole era. But to have David Byrne from the Talking Heads on one of their songs, to have Snoop, to have 2 Chainz, I mean, I just thought it was such a again, courageous and brave and bold move. I love that record. I absolutely love it. It's still on my playlist to this day. Like I listen to it regularly. But it was really interesting that when I first heard it, I was just like, I don't get it. Like I don't like it. And it took a handful of listens for me to really understand the genius of that project. It really did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned, just kind of, it is sort of like on the surface a bizarre guest list.
Yeah.
It's like Rock Marciano's on there too.
Yeah.
Usher was on
Justin
there.
from what's it called? That like rock band. I can't remember his name. Justin Hawkins. Is that it? Hold on.
No, it wasn't the Black Keys. It was
No. The Darkness.
Yeah, okay.
From the Darkness. Yeah. Okay, so we got Jill Scott. Yeah. We had Justin Hawkins, Usher, like you mentioned, 2 Chainz, and then of course one of my favorites on the record was the feature with Damon Albarn, Here and After, the very last song. No, second to last song. That one, just the mood of it. I mean, the words they're talking about, like it just shows their growth as people too. I really think, just like the subject matter they're rapping about. Just kind of like never really feeling like they're the best, but like they know that they get the accolades and stuff like that, but they still, strive to be better. I don't know. I just thought it was a really mature kind of outlook. Even on the song with Estelle, like talking about regretting, like, straying on tour, in a relationship and like all this stuff, just kind of owning their mistakes. And I just love it. Love it. And they didn't need Tommy Boy for that shit. Right.
Exactly. And I think another thing with that album that kind of stands out to me is just the way, like you said, that they're not that they were in that self-deprecating mode again, but they're just kind of like the way they had very honest assessments of themselves. And I think that's kind of, when you're an artist, there's a certain, we talked about it, like that there's that bravado that you need, and like you kind of you got to pump your ego in a way, to make this kind of crazy career, to follow it through. But these guys are just, they had reached this point in their life where they're just willing to be extremely self-reflective and not afraid to just kind of, share it publicly. And it is an interesting choice, like just for an album like that where your fans have like funded you, and it's like that you feel like maybe you feel that pressure of like, oh, we need to like recreate, Stakes is High or De La Soul. Like, we need to make something like that. They would they think they want, like they made this very distinct album, and it is very De La Soul to do that.
And also, like, I feel that for kind of day one fans, like we kind of grew up with them, so getting to see them as like, artists in their late 40s or whatever, like we're right there with you. We've seen the progression, like from the kids, messing around in high school and the, Me, Myself, and I video to like where they are today. And it's, I don't know, you don't get that opportunity with every artist, you know what I mean? So I think that's what, and also their vulnerability too. I mean, I think that's why I liked Jay-Z's 444 album, because it's like he finally was just so honest about, you know, everything he's done or mistakes he's made and things he's gone through, that it just made me understand him more as a human being. And you know, so it's like in the beginning we got to know like the silly, fun De La Soul, and then like here at this last record, it's like, okay, we get to know like the adult, like grown up De La Soul, and you know, and hear about all the things they've kind of learned throughout their career. And I loved it. I loved it. Exodus, the way it ends, I just really liked it. I don't think I like Greyhounds that much, though. I will be honest. Usher's not my favorite.
Put that on your resume. Usher is not.
Yeah, Usher is not my favorite, and survived a pandemic, all going on my resume.
One more thing I did want to touch on that album was what you said, you know, about how your initial reaction was, oh, I don't like it. And
Yeah.
I wonder if, you know, just the way things are right now, it's just, there's so much to consume. There's just absolutely, it's like, you know, I do wonder if we're kind of losing that sort of moment where, you know, that you revisit the album a few days later, or maybe you revisit months later, maybe you revisit a year later, and it's like it finally connects with you. And it's like, you know, I just hope on some level that, you know, at least hip hop heads, listeners, like something that they think maybe they thought they might have liked it, but it didn't register. Like I hope that revisiting still exists, and that people are still kind of you know, letting albums grow on them in a way.
Me too. And like, I miss the album. Okay. Like, I'm sick of these singles. Okay. Like, give me a great body of work, for God's sakes. I think anybody can go out and make like a catchy single with not much thought to it, with a hot beat, and throw it out there and blah, 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 blah. But like, it takes a lot to really craft a good album. And I'm excited to see what Redman's doing, because he's from Muddy Waters 2. He's promised me that that's what's coming, is like, he's taking it back to the 90s, baby. It's going to be a full body of work. And I can't wait. Like, I hope that we're starting to see that happen again. And I don't know who posted it, but I saw something the other day that was like, you know, you're going to start seeing our hip hop legends a lot more. Like we're coming back. You know what I mean? It's like, come back, come take the culture back, please. Like, I don't mind. I'll welcome you with open arms. And if that's the case, dude, like, I think we have a promising future. Please, Lord.
One thing I did want to, you know, circle back to though, was you mentioned Gorillas, and I think it's funny. You know, another episode we were talking hieroglyphics, and Del the Funky Homo Sapien, working with them. And
Love him.
It is kind of funny how Gorillas was probably an avenue, you know, a gateway for a lot of people to find some hip hop artists. And De La Soul might have been one of them with Feel Good. I mean, this song was huge. And, you know, I think if you're already a De La Soul fan, when that happens, like, you know, that song is just, oh, that's a cool look for them. You know, it's like, oh, that's great. But it's like, when I think about it, you know, that song might have brought them so many new listeners that they never would have been exposed to any other way.
Of course.
All based on that.
Okay, I was so lucky in, like, I think it was 2011 or 2012. I don't know, 2011 probably, or 2010. I got to go to Denver and see Gorillaz play with De La Soul, Little Dragon, Bobby Womack, 2 members of The Clash. Like, it was one of the most incredible shows. But it's like, you look around and there's such a diverse, you know, audience, right? Like, and so many people were getting to hear De La Soul for the first time. So many youngins, you know, maybe some oldens, if that's a word. But, you know, it was a really cool experience. And again, like, it speaks to their eclecticism and their willingness to you know, work outside of the box and work with interesting people and different people that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to work with. Amazing. I love them.
So, you know, that's on the positive note. On the more negative note, I did want to get into the the whole Tommy Boy mess.
I was
a little
waiting for
bit.
that.
And
Oh,
the
it's a
Tommy
mess.
Boy, I think a lot of fans kind of know that they've been in conflict with Tommy Boy about, getting these records on streaming. And then when they were finally going to do it, it was like they weren't going to see a penny from it. And it just got.
No, they were going to see 90-10. So
and so
De La was going to get 10% and Tommy was going to get 90%.
So it's just been, they've been probably the face of kind of like the label versus the artist battle in a way for a while. Maybe for a younger fan, Lil Uzi Vert was that for a while, when he was arguing with, but like De La was kind of a face of just like that kind of oppressive label culture, versus the artist. The game changer just kind of fortuitous happens recently. Tommy Boy
That's
gets
perfect
bought,
timing. Yeah.
and now
$100 million. $100 million. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
So there's now kind of life again in the whole debate and the whole discussion of so I guess what have you learned over the years over their talking with them about the battle with Tommy Boy, and what do you see this purchase? Do you feel like there's actually a resolution that's finally going to happen?
I'm hopeful. I have been talking to like their people and stuff about it because I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen now. One of the posts they wrote that morning when the news broke was like, I woke up feeling a lot lighter and like, something like that, like happier. And I definitely feel like there's going to be some major changes. And according to an article, I think on Variety, the new owners are committed to bringing De La's catalog to streaming. So that's all sounds really promising. I hope they can come to an agreement where they're both happy. I think one of the most poignant things I learned was that the whole thing has caused a lot of quote unquote pain and suffering in their families. Like it's been really hard on the group because they've had to tour like relentlessly and like just do things that maybe they wouldn't have had to necessarily do if they had that kind of streaming revenue coming in. And again, Maceo is very transparent about, the emotional, mental toll it's taken on him. And, and he, as he explained, it's like people are going to be in the comment section like, oh, you guys signed the contract, and it's like, dude, they were kids, and it's like when you go into a situation like that and you're a teenager, maybe your early 20s, you don't understand lawyer lingo and like all, all that stuff. And okay, like, sure, you can place some blame on them, but also it's like, come on, Tom, like, give them a break. They were kids. And I think that to me is really, really shitty of them to kind of, hold against them. They didn't know what they were doing. Yeah.
It is funny when you always see like you signed the contract kind of thing, and it's like, while I understand that, it's like, so many people, I mean, there's people in their 40s and 50s, 60s that don't know contract lingo. It's like, it's not just because you get older doesn't mean, you get smarter.
Oh, all of a sudden I'm a lawyer and I understand everything this says. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. And like I said, they were 19, 20, 21, whatever. And it's like, what did we know when we were that age? I didn't know shit. Like I said, I was still doing bong hits in my freaking dorm room. Like I wasn't reading contracts. I couldn't tell you what that meant. So yeah, I just think it's kind of a situation where Tommy Boy fucked up. 2014, they lost their catalog to Warner. They had a debt they had to settle. So they ended up getting rid of the catalog. So once they got it back, it was like this whole fight. And they couldn't come to terms that were agreeable. And like I wrote for DX a while ago, a couple of years ago, it's like they were getting jerked by the label, basically. Like I said, the 90-10 split wasn't going to work for them. So then, of course, we saw the Tommy Boy hashtag start circulating. We see Questlove. We see like all sorts of artists getting on board and saying like, yeah, dude, like, Tommy's a shady business person and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, it's fascinating. But this is cool. I wanted to show you this. I wrote this cover story for Wax Poetics in 2013, and this was the first time I got to interview De La. And even then, there were like little hints of, like what they were going through with Tommy Boy. I reread it earlier today. And you know, it's been a long battle, and I just hope to see a resolution very soon so they can kind of, you know, put it behind them and move forward.
Yeah, I think, you know, I know some people kind of be like, oh, well, you know, how much money did they really lose streaming? You know, people are just making, you know, bare bones on streaming, and touring's how you make your money anyway. And while like I will understand that, you know, line of thinking, basically, I think one thing that's maybe overlooking is just kind of the way legends can kind of be treated when their catalog is being, you know, handled with care, you know, and that, you know, you see kind of anniversary re-releases and kind of big, you know, big productions around, you know, re-releases and special vinyls coming out, and just kind of ways to re-engage that dedicated fan base that already exists. Is like somebody that's bought the album 3 times already is like, I'll buy it a 4th time because you got this packaging and I really want that. Like those are the kind of things that they've been missing out on by not, you know, being in this conflict. And because, you know, at the end of the day, it's like all they had to work with was the grind aid and after. And it's so it's like you're missing the whole you're missing the whole story, basically. You know,
I know.
It's so
it's sad. It's so sad. But you know what? I still see De La Soul go rock a sold out crowd at Red Rocks. I see them so happy, you know, being in front of an audience and just enjoying what they do. And it's a beautiful thing, you know, and I think they've dealt with it like with as much grace as they possibly could have, especially in the public eye. And I'm excited to see what happens for them next. I really hope this deal turns out to be something, you know, good for them. So yeah,
that would, I mean, it would obviously be amazing if it has the happy ending. But I think, you know, what you point to is, you know, the De La, it didn't slow De La, you know, in terms of being around, you know, being able to keep their careers going. And I think that's one thing that maybe sometimes gets simplified, like, oh, if you put De La Soul on streaming, well, then they get on this playlist, and that builds the future audience. Like, obviously, you know, younger audiences are in tune to streaming, but it's like, if you want De La Soul's music, it's not hard to get De La Soul's music. You can find it.
Still get it.
You know, people are uploading.
They have the whole
stuff
albums on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, people. While I know, you know, Spotify and Apple and Tidal, there's that convenience level. You know, it's not that De La Soul's music is unconsumable or
get this, you could go to a record store and like buy one, buy an album, find some vinyl. I mean, I don't know. Record stores do still exist. I like that.
So you know, before we close out, we did talk a little bit about De La Soul, talking about this DJ Premier and Pete Rock maybe doing a third AOI.
AOL.
Of course. But what would you know, have you heard any kind of updates on those? And if not, what would you like to kind of see from De La Soul? Like, what do you think is next in terms of chapter for De La Soul?
Okay, I haven't heard any updates on that, and I know how you feel about Pete Rock's Instagram. I would love to see some Pete Rock and De La Soul collabs, and I would love to see DJ Premier. I mean, those are 2 of my favorite producers right there. So I just don't see how we could lose with those collaborations. So I'm definitely looking forward to those materializing. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing them live again. And like I said, what I want for De La is to get their streaming back. I want them to get their catalog and sort that all out. And I want nothing but the best for them. They're one of our pillars, I feel like, in hip hop, and they need to be treated as such.
All right. Well, to kind of close this out, I did, as someone who's talked to them a lot over the years, especially Maceo, maybe what's one thing that you've grown to appreciate from De La Soul through your conversations that you maybe weren't able to just appreciate as a fan consuming the music?
Their genuine care for the culture, and I guess just how honest they are, you know? And it's like, yeah, we know they're honest, like with who they were in their music, but also like when it comes to personal things, like discussing this, you know, like I said, the pain and suffering they experienced in their families, like them just being like willing to talk about those things, I think is really huge, because a lot of times we run across artists who just want to sound like Mr. Cool Guy and Mr. Tough Guy or whatever. Or in my case today, Little Yachty, oh my God, who just doesn't care, doesn't want to say anything. And I think that it's really refreshing to be able to have those kinds of conversations with, you know, artists that you admire. So yeah, I just think they're good people.
Oh, that's good. Well, Kyle, thank you for joining me. It was really great talking to you, and I'm glad you could be
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I miss you, Justin, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, what a great conversation with Kyle about De La Soul. It's great to catch up with her and get into legendary trio's career and everything they did. But man, before we wrap up this week, we always like to leave you with a little listener lagniappe. Me and Lyn sharing what we've been enjoying as of late. Give you some recommendations for some music, movies, TV, whatever in the world of entertainment. So Lyn, what you been digging of late?
So lately, there's this HBO show that I was kind of upset that I was late on. And it's Kate Winslet being like a gritty detective. I don't want to say True Detective-esque, but it's in the vein of that, The Undoing, the typical HBO murder mystery. But this one was incredibly well done. It was so well done that the creator just signed like a 3-year deal with HBO. So, and like Kate Winslet is about to sign a deal with HBO, I believe. So it's like, this show was really great. It's called Mayor of Easttown. If you're an Evan Peters fan, he's in there. Very, very good show. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to spoil anything, because each episode's its own roller coaster. But that was pretty great. And then on the movie tip, wait, I just thought about this because I just saw this. I know you're a horror fan. I saw Quiet Place 2, and I thought it was pretty good. I was in theaters. I thought it was pretty good.
I saw the first Quiet Place. It was very good. It was a very, the whole concept of just the lack of noise is like it really is one of those movies that kind of forces you to change your viewing experience. Like you might be like snacking on popcorn or drinking a soda or whatever you're doing during a movie, like usually, and like that movie forces you to be quiet and enjoy it.
But it puts you on the edge of your seat, because every time a sound's about to happen, you're like, oh man, please don't make a noise right now. So no, that movie, I love that franchise.
Right. And then I think what were you listening on the music tip?
Oh, and on the music tip, got to shout out Smoke DZA. His new project was really dope. The Hustlers Catalog 2. I really enjoyed that. And then on the West Coast, YG and Mozzie's collab album, Community Service. I thought that was a really good album. I'm low key a big Mozzie fan. Like
I love that. Yeah, I love Mozzie. We're I guess his catalog is pretty crazy right now. So we might be able to do a Mozzie episode in not too far down the road.
I would definitely enjoy that. What do you have for the people this week?
This week on the movie front, I'm gonna, not something I saw recently, but just I noticed it was on Amazon Prime, so I wanted to recommend it just because I love it. Like this is a 10 out of 10 movie for me. Like that's how much I love it. It's called The Quiet Family. It's a Korean movie, and a lot of like you'll recognize some of the cast if you've seen Parasite.
Okay.
And the best thing I can say is if you saw Parasite, you'll love this. It's kind of that dark thriller and sort of a little subversive and kind of throwing off your expectations of where the story's going. It's kind of that kind of ride. Again, kind of like Lyn said with Mary East. I don't want to throw out the spoilers, but it's just the basic plot is this little family ends up running like a kind of a B&B hotel type of thing in an obscure part of the town, and hijinks ensue, as you might imagine.
What's this called again? I'm definitely going to watch this.
The Quiet Family.
The Quiet Family. Okay.
Yeah, and if you've ever seen that, this is another fairly big Korean movie. I Saw the Devil. Same director.
I haven't seen that one. Okay.
But yeah, a lot of some of the cast from Parasite is in it, and you can kind of see why. That's the overlap on there. And then music wise, I'm really digging this guy, Family Gang Black. He's out of Rochester, New York, but he's in the Toronto scene. Just really impressed. Kind of sort of maybe in that kind of Griselda lane. Like if
see, that's what I was gonna ask you when you said Toronto scene. That made me like, is this the Weekend Party Next Door Drake side, or like what side is this on? So interesting that it falls under the quote unquote Griselda style.
If you're looking for like the modern it's kind of that, and the Rock Marcianos and the Ka and guys like that have kind of emerged lately. But yeah, sort of that underground scene that's emerging kind of again on the East Coast. Really dope, and kind of has opened my eyes a little bit to Toronto. He's not a Toronto native, but there's a whole kind of dope scene emerging in Toronto, kind of in that style, in that vein. And it's pretty cool. And I just was really impressed. I believe this was his debut album. He's like done like some features and stuff, and used to have a different name. I forget what it was, but this is his first under the name Family Gang Black. And it's a really dope album. So yeah, if you type in Family Gang Black on iTunes or Spotify, whatever, you'll find it. It's his only album. And yeah, really good. So I would recommend checking that out, kind of if you're digging a lot of the kind of indie underground that's out right now.
Gosh, I'm definitely gonna check that out, and I'm going to watch that movie as soon as we're done. Like, I try to watch a movie a night, and that might be the movie of tonight.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about, and what you listeners, if y'all check it out, y'all let us know. And hopefully y'all enjoy those music recommendations as well. But thank you once again for checking us out and enjoying the Never Less Than Ill podcast. Always trying to give you the dope history, the great hip hop acts, the underappreciated hip hop acts that deserve the love. We'll see you next time. Peace.